Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, we have our usual roundup of the big stories around the world relevant to the Sikh community. And then, after receiving a comment from one of our critics claiming we were spreading false information about the fact caste-ridden India is under the control of the upper caste Brahmins, well, we'll take that challenge head on with some facts and figures. And it does make quite shocking viewing, so stay tuned for that. All this and more, though, on today's show. But joining me, as always, is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our viewers out there. Thanks again for tuning in. And don't forget to spread the word again. We need your help to help us push up the numbers and get it out in the algorithms. You know that we have been shadow banned in a lot of areas, especially banned completely in India. So do your part and let's piss off Modi and get the show out there to as many people as possible. Thanks for tuning in yet once again, and don't forget to stick around to the end to see what comments make it onto the show today.
Indeed, and James and I together will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And indeed, at the end of the show, we will take a look at loads of your fantastic comments which have been pouring in. So thank you, as always, for those. Right, James, let's get underway. What are you going to start us off with this morning?
Well, once again, we are taking a look at some headlines from around the world. Now, a few of these stories that we're going to just kind of scan past here, just quick updates, well, a bit more information about different stories that we've covered in the last few days. But most of all, we wanted to focus on some new things, such as, of course, the 50% tariffs. The trade war is heating up between India and the United States. Now, in relation to the additional 25% that went into effect just over 24 hours ago, of course, that has been called a retaliatory tariff towards India in relation to their ongoing support of Russia and Vladimir Putin in the form of purchasing oil and other energy sources from Russia. The U.S. has been trying to pressure India to really reduce the dependency on India and start relying on other sources of energy for their markets. Now, let's take a look at the obvious point here is that, of course, India is going to be looking to get the best deal for their people. They spend a lot of money on energy, and at the end of the day, like anybody that's running a business, they have to be fiscally responsible, and that includes going after the energy where it is cheapest. Yes, that happens to be Russia. Yes, there is a stand being taken by the world against Russia for their illegal war and their illegal attacks and invasion on Ukraine. However, with that said, of course, India is under no obligation to us in Canada, to those in the US or elsewhere, for any type of dictating their trade policy and who they're doing business with. It is a tough pill to swallow at times that they are still dealing with Russia. That helps to fuel the purchase and supply of weapons, other equipment for their military, and so forth. But again, it's up to India who they engage in trade with. So at the end of the day, it is really a tough one because it's going to impact not only people in India when it comes to the trade and the increased cost of tariffs on everyday living, but again, it's also going to have a huge impact on India, on China, on the US, on Canada, and the rest of the global supply chain. So again, it is a tough one. Now, some argue that the US is doing this in order to pressure India to purchase their oil and their natural gas reserves from the US markets. But again, it is really a global issue right now when it comes to renegotiating or trying to solidify the dependence of different markets on the U.S. and trying to bring them back in line as a credible and reliable business partner. Tough one to look at, but at the end of the day, we'll watch and see how long these tariffs stay in place or if there will be immediate changes and obviously we want to see trade for all regions, because this does have an impact on the people of Punjab. It has an impact on the global markets, but at the end of the day, it is all about humanity. And that is a big issue that we have to address on the global scale. We need to see India taking a more proactive role in taking care of their people. And again, it's going to be tough if they are subjected to these additional costs of business with the tariffs on both sides. So again, we'll keep an eye on that and keep you updated as this war of the economic status of certain countries continues. Now, moving on, of course, we also have been talking about the floods in India and Pakistan. It turns out that there have been over 1,200 deaths related to the storms thus far. Now, there have been images saturating the internet, especially when you look at Twitter, now X, of course, Facebook, Instagram, and the like. But it's saturated with images of heroic workers that are on both sides of the border and trying to save lives of those caught in the storms. To make it even worse, there have been some major landslides that have shut down roads and main arteries and thoroughfares to get to certain outerlying communities in many different states or provinces within within India and Pakistan. So it's been tough. Now, unfortunately, what had to happen was that with the rivers in India, including those in Punjab, being just at record levels, and of course spilling their banks, taking out farms and very, very important farmland, they had to release some of that pressure and the volume somewhere. When they started to release that water, of course, it's going downstream, and it has a major impact on communities that are in those areas. To give you some idea, on the screen there, I have some numbers up, and that is down towards the bottom of this paragraph here. Now, the Heroic Headworks, the inflow of water peaked at 203,000 cusecs. Now, that's cubic feet per second. And they were forced to release 185,000 cusecs. So that, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the volume there, but that is just a very, very large amount of water. But more importantly, it's very powerful. You know, when you spill a glass of water, it is really not a big deal when you think about the pressure, the weight, and the energy behind it. But when you're talking about hundreds of thousands of cusecs, that can wipe out entire villages. It can take more lives. And of course, the numbers that we're looking at are very preliminary. There are so many other towns that have not been accounted for in terms of all of the people. This is going to take some time to get an accurate and complete or somewhat complete calculation of the total human cost of these floods, not to mention, of course, the financial and other impacts that it's going to have on the economy, on the food supply, and so much more. Here in this image that you'd seen on your screen, this was actually the Pakistan National Disaster Management Authority that sent this image out. And here you can see them rescuing people from the banks of the river. Again, as I said, some of the towns and cities and other communities have been completely blocked off due to the mudslides. They are working, the different organizations, the different government agencies, and the military, as well as law enforcement, are using helicopters to get food and aid into some communities, and at the same time evacuating others because they remain at risk from the amazing amounts of water that are just pouring through and taking everything, just a path of destruction in their wake. Now, at this time, of course, the SAD has launched its own relief efforts. They have actually supplied 10,000 liters of diesel for the water pumps. They've brought in plastic piping, or probably PVC, food packets, and a medical team to be able to mobilize to these affected regions. So once again, it is still an ongoing story, an ongoing disaster. And once again, we encourage you that if you have the opportunity to donate or find places online to donate, that you take the extra time to vet those organizations to ensure that your money is going to the proper sources and not just some fraudulent charity that's online. A big problem at this point in many different areas. So please take the time to make sure that your donations and contributions are actually going to make it to those in need. Now, when we look at this, it is going to take years, as we said last night, for them to start to rebuild, and to probably 10 years before they get completely recovered from these monsoon floods. We know that it happens every year, so of course that next year and the year after, depending on climate change, of course, that has a direct impact on all of these situations. Whether or not you agree with climate change, of course, we are seeing, whether it is within your scope of belief or not, we are seeing harsher and more devastating weather patterns and storms hitting regions around the globe. So again, our thoughts are with everyone being impacted by the storms today and over the last several weeks. Now we'll just do a quick roundup of some of the other stories that are making significant importance around the world. And we're going to start with a quick update to the story of the trucker in Florida. Some new information did come out. Of course, we found out first and foremost that Sikhs for Justice and the Sikh community has come together to contribute $100,000 US to the families of those injured. They have stepped forward as a humanitarian relief for those families for immediate needs and to help them to deal with this devastating loss of those 3 lives in the accident. Furthermore, there had been conflicting reports coming out from different sources that claimed that the driver was illegally in the U.S., that he did not have the proper qualifications for a commercial driver's license, and that he had actually used some fraudulent paperwork to get that license. In the information that's come out yesterday, it appears that he did not flee the region after the accident, as has been reported. It turns out that his base was in California. The accident happened in Florida. He was not actually instructed at the time to remain in the state. His employer in California sent him a plane ticket to get him back home to California. And that, I think, is a very big piece of information that wasn't readily available right away. I know that it makes a big difference in my view, that it makes a lot more sense why he was arrested in California when the accident happened on the other side of the country. So that is, a clarification at that point. In terms of his status in the U.S., yes, he did arrive as an asylum seeker. He came through the proper channels of crossing the border and applying for asylum, which his application was being processed. He had court dates. So depending on your definition of being illegally in the United States, he did have an appointment with or a hearing in the courts for his asylum application. With that, it comes an ability to work, to get employment so that he can support himself while he maintains his application and waits for that to process and to move forward. Mm-hmm. Now, with that, he did have a valid commercial driver's license. With a commercial driver's license, of course, comes a lot more responsibility than the average driver. You have a duty of care that is far way and above that of a regular driver that's out on the streets just driving for their own purposes. So just to clear up a few of those facts, I just thought that was important for us as more information came out. And again, just congratulations. And, I'm really proud to see the Sikh community coming forward and helping the victims of this tragic, tragic loss that happened on the highways there. A lot more information will come out, and we'll keep you posted on that. But again, I just wanted to bring that up there. Now, in terms of a victory for People's Movement in Punjab, a significant development, the AAP government in Punjab has withdrawn its controversial land pooling policy that we spoke of last week. But again, there is ongoing concerns about the farmland and about the areas and farmers in those regions. Now, of course, we know that that is considered a magnificent victory, but let's take a look here that the struggle, or remind you that the struggle still continues for the farmers in Punjab. And this is separate from the storms, of course, and the monsoons. Now, the fight for the agricultural rights persists. The SKM has held a gathering in Delhi, renewing its core demands, and that is for a legal guarantee for the minimum support price, as well as as that is for all crops and calculated as per the to the Swaminathan Commission formula. So again, it is a very big importance as well to see the police cases removed that have been previously registered against the farmers during previous protests. So the central government has responded by promising a meeting with the agriculture minister to discuss these issues. So it appears that there is some communication going on, which is a big step forward. And now it's just a matter of what comes out of those. Again, adding to the woes of the agriculture sector, the farmers across several districts are alleging that heavily subsidized urea meant for their crops is being illegally diverted to industrial use. So it is a big concern with all of the other coupled events that are going on when it comes to the agriculture sector. Now, this has created an artificial shortage and forced the farmers to purchase the essential fertilizers on the black market. Now, not only is that up to 4 times more expensive, but of course it can strain their finances, and whether or not they are getting a legitimate fertilizer that is non-compromised is also a major concern. Now, we've already touched on the fact of the Harjinder Singh case, so we'll keep moving along from there. And the sacrilege in Lithuania is, of course, about the different events that have been going on where there has been sacrilege at certain gurdwaras. And in Lithuania, it is a big concern because a lady actually removed her clothes inside the holy premises. This has sparked outrage that led to demands for a swift and firm action against the accused. And that is just disgusting in terms of the fact that, this is a place of holiness. This is a place of worship. This is a place that is revered and endeared. And this person comes in and just, insults the people and the whole principle and culture behind it. And I just hope that they do throw the book at her. Hopefully they put clothes back on her first. But regardless, hopefully they'll throw the book at her. Now, in terms of the final here, we'll take a look at the political landscape, and that is in Punjab. The state's political scene remains in flux. Yes, we've been covering that over the last few days in various stories as well, and looking, of course, at the Congress Party's national leadership stepping in to quell growing factionalism, where the Punjab unit urging leaders to bury the hatchet and focus on the 2027 elections for the Assembly. This is something, again, that we've been talking about because there seems to be a bit of a, almost a bribery of the electorate. And that means, or that in the text of different programs that are being brought forward and trying to entice the voters to skip over to the BJP or vice versa. So again, very, very important. And then, of course, you also have the breakaway faction of the Shiromani Akali Dal, and that was formed under the edict of the Akal Takht. So again, just different levels, different committees, and the Congress party stepping in. So we'll watch and see how that plays out over time. And of course, we'll watch as the government tries to bring forward programs to sweeten the pot, because of course they want to have a lot more influence in Punjab. Of course, we've covered the fact that we think, or at least I do, that it's got a lot to do with the potential sovereign assignment of the Punjab region into an amazing sovereign state or nation of Khalistan. I think that they feel if they have more power and control within the region, then they can stave off that eventual succession of Punjab and see the formation of Khalistan, Angus.
Yes, indeed. I'll just like to start really with that very final story, which is the political landscape of Punjab. It is going through some pretty seismic shifts. People maybe not even realising just how significant the political landscape is changing in Punjab. Of course, it is driven by this deep underlying desire, this bubbling cauldron of resentment of the treatment of particularly the Sikh community from Delhi. And it's driving this pro-Khalistan movement. It is driving this movement to say, look, why are we suffering under Delhi's kosh? Why can't we make our own decisions? We have the democratic right to demand that we can make our own decisions as a region. In fact, more than that, not just as a region, but as a separate sovereign Sikh state. That is what's driving this. And of course, as a result of that, the old political order is breaking apart. Congress, BJP, and Admi, they're all fighting over the Punjab. But what's appeared in just less than 12 months, we have the Shiromani Akali Dal Waris Punjab Day. Yes, the Shiromani Akali Dal, that original political party set up by the Sikh community back in the early 20th century, it was set up to provide a voice for the Sikh people to, still under the British Empire. They said, look, the only way we are going to have our policies enacted is to play the game, play the British democratic game. So they created their own political party that then fitted into that political game, the Shiromani Akali Dal. Unfortunately, since 1947, since the partition, is that the RSS then have decided, well, we can't afford to let the Sikhs have their own political voice. They are too much of a danger to our existence, and particularly the Brahmanical control of India. So they've done everything in their power to undermine the Shiromani Akali Dal, to infiltrate it and basically bring it down from within. That is essentially what they've done. As a result of all that, we now see Shiromani Akali Dal Waris Punjab Day. This is the quiet revolution going on in the Punjab. As we saw in the election last summer, Waris Punjab Day, Shiromani Akali Dal Waris Punjab Day, it's quite a mouthful. This is Amritpal Singh's new party, him and his father, and Beyant Singh as well, the son of one of the assassins of Indira Gandhi. They've garnered massive support locally because at last the Sikh people in Punjab realise there is actually a new political party that speaks for them, that isn't infected by the RSS, that isn't infiltrated by the Badal family and their tentacles, their RSS influenced tentacles. This is a party that actually stands up for genuine Sikh issues like the drug problems, the poverty problems, the problems of a declining industrial base, the problems essentially that stem from central control from Delhi, that is controlled by people who don't actually represent the interests of the Sikh people. This is why Waris Punjab Day, this new group, it's a fragmentation from the Shiromani Akali Dal, but basically this new political party is rising with such popularity. Amritpal Singh was elected with a nearly 200,000 majority in his constituency last summer, despite the fact he was in prison. Now you imagine, you scale that across Punjab, and given enough time, it reflects actually what's happening here in the UK, the Reform Party, in pretty much the same timescale. They've almost exploded into potentially the next party of power, the next government. And this is what Waris Punjab Day potentially can do in Punjab. They can potentially sweep the board, given the chance. Now, they are, of course, operating under an undemocratic environment where central Delhi, and particularly the Modi government and, of course, the RSS behind it, they are doing their absolute level best, using every dirty trick in the book to make sure that Waris Punjab Day can't spread, cannot campaign, cannot actively get out there and sweep the board of the Punjab. So they're using every trick they can to try and stop it. But, as I always say, you cannot suppress the people. The people always win in the end. The people will always find a way to express their will and get their will. And that is what is happening. And the more that Delhi tries to stamp down on the growth of the Shiromani Akali Dal Wars Punjab Day, the more it will appear in the most unexpected places. As I often use the same metaphor, it's like squeezing a small balloon in your hand. It will always find a way to pop out between your fingers in those cracks. It will always find a way to get out there. And that is what happens with democracy. It doesn't matter how much you squeeze it, how much you try and stamp down on it, it will always find a way to explode out somewhere else. And usually, the harder you stamp down on it, the more violent that explosion tends to be, that explosion of democracy. So, all I would say is keep an eye on Punjab politics, because I do believe it is genuinely undergoing a quiet revolution. It is a peaceful democratic revolution, but it is driven by this enormous growth and support for the Khalistan cause. And this is bizarrely and fantastically what Modi's BJP and the RSS don't seem to realise. The more they are stamping down, the more it is actually increasing support for the Khalistan cause. Not just within the Punjab, of course, it's massive outside of the diaspora, but also outside the Sikh community. More and more people in national governments, in politics, just in the mainstream, just ordinary people in the West are starting to wake up to this. What is this Khalistan? What does it mean? And as part of that same discussion, they're saying, oh yeah, now I'm understanding what India is actually up to. India isn't this country we actually thought it was, that we had this perception of, this sort of nice, warm, rosy-tinted view of this sort of land of the gurus and peaceful, etc., etc. It's not. It is a country that is riven by undemocratic oppression of its minorities. It is riven by dreadful poverty, it's riven by drugs, etc., etc. There's an awful lot wrong with India. We love India dearly, but there's an awful lot wrong with it, and that primarily comes down to its governance, and that is where we direct our ire. Not against the Indian people, it is against the government that is ruling through the caste system, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But anyway, yeah, so James, I started on that particular subject, but I seem to have spoken primarily about that. But let me just quickly jump on to one other topic you talked about, which of course is the tariffs, the big topic here. We've talked a lot about the tariffs, about Trump's tariffs on India. And actually this is linked to really the same story in many ways. Is India is at a crossroads. India really is at this crucial nexus point. It is going to have to make a decision soon. Which side of the world, let's call it in simplistic terms, is it going to align itself with? It is going to have to make a decision. Is it a democratic country that aligns with the democratic West, the United States, Canada, Europe, UK, Australia, New Zealand, all the same democratic nations out in the West? Does it align with those principles, that belief in basic democracy and the rule of law? Or will it align itself with the authoritarian regimes, the more communist regimes of China, of Russia, of the theocracies like Iran, North Korea, etc.? That is, at the moment, is the direction it seems to be heading, primarily because, firstly, of its historic ties with Moscow and its deep embedded ties. Moscow has really got its claws into Delhi, and it has done since 1947 when the British moved out. That is why the ties are so deep between Delhi and Moscow. But Delhi has had a choice and has been seduced enormously by the West. The West has thrown every possible angle of seduction at India, saying that please come and join us. You are a democracy. Come and be part of our family, our democratic global family. Yet India, particularly under the BJP, particularly under the Modi government, have moved closer and closer in alignment with the BRICS economies, the Russia, the China, the North Koreas, the Irans of the world. Why is it doing that? That's a big question. But I'm sure the people of India haven't really been consulted. And I'm sure, given the choice, the actual people on the ground in India would much rather live in a democratic nation, James.
Absolutely. And let's face it, I mean, at this time, if there is the opportunity, they're going to take it and they're going to run with it and they're going to be massively successful with it. So, that's the reality of it. When you look at the opportunities that are present. But again, that's why the government of India wants to suppress any chance of a separation of any state.
Indeed. And so talking about India, and I'm going to move on to my first story. And we received a comment a little while ago And it was from a guy who calls himself JK. Let me just have a look at this. Here we go. So JK304 made a comment a month ago, actually. Now, unfortunately, we've been so busy with so many other stories. I've always been intending to go back to this criticism because it really, I thought, no, this really does need addressing. And finally, we found a slot to do it. He said, or he or she, I don't know, paid journalists talking absolute BS without any facts. Okay, I mean, we've had that one before, it's nonsense. I mean, without facts, we always back up our stories with facts. And we're paid journalists, not very well paid, but we're just paid like every other journalist on the planet. We all need to put food on our table. We need to eat. We need to have a roof over our heads. I'm sorry, but that's the way of the world. Like it or lump it. But anyway, there are absolutely no Brahmins controlling or in power right now. Modi's from the lower caste. The president is from the tribal community. Okay, this is the bit I'm going to address. So I'm going to refute this with some actual facts and figures, and it's astonishing that you even believe this, and it concerns me. I don't know if you're in India or outside India, but if you are in India, oh boy, you really need to wake up and, as they say, smell the roses and realise what sort of society you're actually living in. I suspect maybe you're not in India, because surely you can't be in India and not realise just what is going on in India in terms of the social caste structure. But anyway, and then you talk about Khalistanis spew hatred towards Hindus. No, they don't. And their way of doing this is by spreading lies like this. Let me just quickly address this one to start with. Khalistanis don't spread hatred towards Hindus. Khalistanis only react to Hindu hatred. It is a reaction. Hindus, and I say Hindus, it's not Hindus, it's Hindutva. And there's a distinction here. Hindutva hate the Sikh community because the Sikh community stands as an existential threat. That's what that's all about. Khalistan is a pipe dream that will never happen. Well, let's see, mate. Let's see. But at the moment, it's on its way. You talked about referendum 2020. Yeah, because it's going around the diaspora. That referendum is one day going to happen in the Punjab. One day it is going to force its way through democratic means into India. Just wait and see. But anyway, that's a different area. Right, so the main point I wanted to address in this is about the Brahmins. Do the Brahmins control India? Now, this guy, or this person, says, no, it's absolute nonsense. It is not true. Really? Okay. So I did, and unfortunately, we don't have a huge team of researchers to do this, so I had to do some very quick research, and I did find quite a lot of facts and figures. Now, some of them are quite old, unfortunately. It's quite hard, unfortunately, of course, under modern India. It's very hard to actually get the truth out of really what is happening, because, of course, the Brahmins, who do control India, do their very best to ensure that any news, any truth out there, if it doesn't suit their agenda, is very deeply buried. So it's very hard to get the truth. So it's very hard to get genuine statistics that reflect actually what's going on the ground. But I do have a load of statistics which I'm going to throw at you, which make quite shocking reading. And I have to thank bspkumar.com for this. This guy, B-Sai Prasanna Kumar, I want to credit this guy. He's done an awful lot of work on this. Thank you. Go visit his website. He's got an awful lot about the caste system, etc. It's well worth a visit. So thank you to this person for all the huge work that this person has obviously done on this. He describes himself, he says, my name is B-Sai Prasanna Kumar, or BSP Kumar for short. His views are against Brahmanism, not Brahmins or Hindus. And again, important distinction there. We're not against India, we're not against Hindus, we are against Hindutva and the extremists, the nationalist extremists. That's where we target. He says, let us annihilate the caste system that affects 90% of Indians and its inherent socio-economic and gender inequality. Know that Hinduism evolved from the ancient religion Vedic Brahmanism. Now, Brahmanists kept the Varna system, or Sanatana Dharma, and caste system alive, disguised in its religion for over 3,000 years to maintain their supremacy. And now they're fooling ordinary Hindus with pseudo-nationalist ideology. Hindutva. Yes, indeed, how true this is. That last election was fought on that very same premise. Not all the information about Hinduism, Sanatana Dharma, across the internet, major news websites, etc., and other popular websites is true, because the Brahmins, as he says, have been distorting the history of India and Hinduism. Indeed, they are rewriting history. They're only ensuring that misinformation that supports their agenda is allowed out into the public domain. So again, as I said, it's very hard to get the truth about this. So he goes through a huge set of there's pages and pages of this information. So I've had to try and distill it down into short bite-sized lumps. And he discussed how Brahmanism, also known as Sanatana Dharma or the Varna system, helped Brahmins dominate government sector jobs, private sector jobs, education institutions, the judiciary, politics, sports, basically every social field that matters. In this hierarchical Varna system, Brahmins occupy the top positions, enjoy more resources and respect. And of course, down at the bottom, you've got the Dalits who occupy the bottom position and as a result enjoy less resources and are treated dreadfully as untouchables. And of course, the socio-economic conditions of people from different castes in India still bear a strong resemblance to this original Varna system, which is, of course, around 3,000 years old. Now, let's flash up some facts and figures. Let's start with the mean monthly per capita consumption expenditure, poverty headcount ratio by caste. Now, a study that was done by Ashoka University, this study empirically examined the justification for a slew of preferential policies aimed at Brahmins, the group unambiguously regarded at the top of the caste hierarchy. And this was just over 3 states in India, but of course you can reasonably scale it across India. But basically, if you look at the mean per capita consumption, and this is basically how much every person spends in simple terms, how much they have available to spend on a daily basis or a monthly basis. Of course, at the top, Brahmins, they are nearly double. They are able and have the resources to spend more than double the Dalits. That is how much wealth they have on a daily basis. They can go out there and spend on a daily basis more than twice as much as your average Dalit or your average lower caste person. So that speaks volumes. Let's look at the next indicator, differences in material standards of living. So this looks at basic standards of living. Now, just to give you a clue what each of these lines, if you look across these lines, the first line, the blue line, is the per capita household income. The next line is the consumption expenditure, followed by shareholding of professional jobs, share classified as non-poor, then those households with access to toilet facilities, something fairly basic in the modern world, and the share of households who own or cultivate land. So this is a good cross-section of a basic view of a standard of living. And look who's at the top. The Brahmins by an absolute huge margin. And down at the bottom, of course, the SCST is the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes. They are, of course, the minority tribe, the minority in the lower caste. OBCs is the other backward caste. In other words, again, very much the lower caste. The OBCs, the SCSTs, these are essentially the minority and the lower caste. The lower castes are massive in terms of population, so they are the OBCs, and the SCSTs are the scheduled castes, the scheduled tribes, which are the deeply underprivileged and the minority tribes. For example, I'm looking at places like Manipur, where you've got many of the tribes who exist in the minority. But very clear distinction there, absolutely unambiguous. Who basically has the highest standard of living across India? It's in black and white, or it's in blue, in a thick blue line. And as I said, the Brahmins have up to 3 times higher than that of a non-Brahmin, even upper caste Hindu and the SCST caste. So, differences in human capital across groups. Now, this actually looks at, in simple terms, education. Education is always a great indicator of privilege, of the ability to go out there, make a living, and make a good living, or not making a living at all. Now, education. 30% of Brahmins hold a professional job, while the corresponding figures are 12% of non-Brahmin, upper caste Hindus, so that even in the upper caste who are not Brahmins, only 12% hold a professional job as opposed to 30% of Brahmins. And then you look at the other backward classes, 8%, 6% of SCSTs, and 3% of upper caste Muslims, interesting. So even the Muslims, the upper caste Muslims, suffer dreadfully. They don't hold professional jobs. It's the Brahmins overwhelmingly hold the professional jobs as a result of education. And just to give you a clue, that blue line at the top is the number of years of schooling. In other words, the Brahmins have the overwhelming majority in terms of years of schooling. That education, that start in life, that in turn, that sets you up for life. And you look at all the other ones who absolutely pale into insignificance compared to the Brahmin share of schooling. And that particularly goes down to the youngsters as well. Now, let's, of course, post-education, you move into jobs. You need to make a living. So let's take a look at the corporate sector, business in simple terms. So we look at this pie chart. This pie chart shows of the top 1,000 companies listed on the main stock exchange in India, 90% of board directors belong to 2 castes. Now, 47% almost to the Vaishya caste, that is an upper caste, but non-Brahmin, and 44% to the Brahmins. So basically, 90% of board directors belong to the upper two castes and pretty much shared equally between Brahmins and Vaishyas. 2% to the Kshatriyas and other forward castes, and the remaining 7, just over 7%, belong to all other castes put together, which make up over 90% of India's population. So again, you start to get a picture of just who is controlling corporate India. Now, this is primarily because there's always a natural discriminatory advantage. If you're from an upper caste family, of course you have the connections, the social networks that they've developed over the years. Again, even going back to school, private schooling particularly, where you build up those networks. Also because it's not based on merit, essentially also. These boardroom directors are not there essentially because of merit. It's primarily because most Indian corporate businesses are family owned. And most of the time the top management is hired from within the family caste social network. So again, we look after each other. I'll just throw in here, this actually isn't, a lot of this is not actually particular to India. Of course, we do experience this in the West. We don't have a caste system, we have a class system, particularly in the UK. It is nowhere near as prevalent and as obvious, but it does exist to a limited extent in the West as well. If you go to the right schools, the right universities, it does set you up for life. So I'm just caveating with everything I'm saying here. There is only a subtle hint of hypocrisy here in the West, but it's only tiny, it's subtle. This is something very different. This really is, excuse the pun, a class of its own. Now, here's some interesting facts and figures that I just find shocking. The Brahmins, roughly, account for about 3.5% of the country's population. Remember that figure. 3.5% of the population are Brahmins. Together, they hold as many as 70% of government jobs. Here's some examples. Senior echelons of the civil service, they occupy 63%. State chief secretaries, 73% are Brahmins. Governors, lieutenant governors, 48% are Brahmins. Supreme Court judges, 56% are Brahmins. Judges of high courts, 50% are Brahmins. Ambassadors, 41%. IAS officers, 72%. Lok Sabha, the lower house of parliament. So MPs, 37% are Brahmins. In the upper house, Rajya Sabha, 36% are Brahmins. So 3.5% of the Brahmin community hold between 36 and 63% of all the senior jobs in India. Yeah. Now, these statistics are slightly old, I have to admit, but I do know that not much has changed. Now, there was a big change in 1992. They brought in legislation, the OBC reservations, the other backward classes, legislation was brought in the 90s to try and change this. It has changed to a limited extent, but these facts, although they are dated, still are almost relevant. Certainly, today, and again, it's very hard to get today's facts and figures, but they are not that different to these facts and figures. And then looking at miscellaneous areas, and again, well done to this guy for just looking right across the board. It's not just corporate life, it's not just business, it's not just politics. Indian cricket team, cricket is religion in India. It is so important. I can't stress how important cricket is for India. I'm a cricket lover and I love cricket, but good heavens, Indians adore cricket. Between 1960 and 1990, Test cricket playing Indian teams averaged at least 6 Brahmins, sometimes even 9. That's it. There are 11 people in a cricket team in the first 11. So 11 out of 11 players, at least between 6 and 9 have been Brahmins. That's probably as a result of the schools that they went to, I would say. But again, just shows. 6 of the 15 prime ministers of India were Brahmins. Nehru, Gandhi, Desai, Gandhi again, Rao, Bihari, Vajpayee, etc., etc. Now, go back to our original critic. He said, Modi isn't Brahmin. No, you're right, he's not. He is actually from the OBC, incredibly. But here's the difference. He is a Brahminist. He supports Brahminist Hindutva ideology and Sanatana Dharma. In 76 years of rule of independence, that actually dates these statistics. It's a little bit more since then. But Brahmins have ruled for 51 years of 76 years. Upper castes in total, not just Brahmins, but the upper castes have ruled for 66 out of 76 years. You can work out the percentage yourself. And Modi, a Brahminist, has ruled for 10 years as of last year. So again, you get to see how the Brahmins particularly, but of course the upper caste overall, dominate Indian politics. Now, Modi and I've talked about this before, the Brahmins appoint people as puppets. They appoint people that they bless with privilege, they bless with money, power, influence. You come and work for us, well, we'll reward you with all this, but you must follow our agenda. You must advocate for us. This is what Modi is. He is basically a puppet. We've made no secret of this. Modi and many others like him are puppets of the RSS Hindutva ideology, which ultimately is ruled and run by the Brahmins. It is a tool of the Brahmins, the upper caste Brahmins. So people like Modi are just basically puppets whose strings are being pulled by the Brahmins. So when you say, we don't have a Brahmin Prime Minister, on the face of it, no you don't, but just dig a little deeper. It's not hard, mate. Who do you think controls Modi? Who do you think creates his policy? You think he lies in bed and thinks, I know what policy I'll come up with next? No, he gets told by the Brahmins, this is what your agenda is, these are what policies are, if you don't like it, you're out. You support it, we'll keep you in power and we'll keep rewarding you. Unfortunately, it's a fact of life, that's the way the world works. And then final miscellaneous statistic, 40% of national law school students were Brahmins in the 1990s, and I know not much has changed since then. So again, draw your own conclusions. So there's a whole section about the caste system, and I just want to quickly, again, just to shock you, to give you an idea of how shocking the caste situation is in India. Caste system is technically illegal. The caste system technically, legally, does not exist in India, but of course it does. Of course it still very much runs India. It still very much forms the social fabric of India. This is why the Sikh people are so hated by the Brahmins, the people at the top of that pyramid, because the Sikh people constantly point out, and we as acting on their behalf, speak on their behalf, point this very fact out. India is run by this evil of the caste system. The caste system is what is keeping 99% pretty much of Indian people in chains, in slavery, in a prison of their own making. They don't even realise it, most of them. Of course, those who do realise it are at the very bottom of the heap, the Dalits, the lower caste. Every 15 minutes, a crime is committed against a Dalit. Does anybody care? No, of course they don't, because they're the bottom of that pyramid. Every year, nearly 1,000 Dalits were killed in caste-motivated atrocities. Every day, 6 Dalit women are raped. They're even just the ones we know about. You think about the ones we never hear about because they're too afraid. They know they're a Dalit, they can't report it, they'll never be taken seriously. But the official statistic is 6 Dalit women a day are raped. It comes also down to this word untouchability. Untouchability was officially banned in 1950, just after partition, but it's still very much in practice. Again, statistics. Percentage of Indian households that practice untouchability. Brahmins, unsurprisingly, top of the heap there. I mean, untouchability exists. I showed a story, was it about a year and a half ago? It was a shocking video that went viral across social media. It was an upper caste Indian urinating on a Dalit. There was a Dalit boy, a young boy, I think he was a teenager, sitting in a shop doorway, just sitting there. And this, I think he was drunk actually, it was an upper caste Indian, just stood there and urinated on it, whilst one of his mates videoed it on his phone. He literally stood there and urinated on this Dalit boy who literally had just to sit there with his head bowed and urine pouring over him. There was nothing he could do about it. That, to me, sums up India. That sums up modern-day India in the 21st century. You're trying to tell me untouchability doesn't exist. You're trying to tell me the caste system doesn't exist. Do me a favour. Watch that video. It absolutely sickened me to the core. Anyway, untouchability is very much practiced across India. Of course, the Dalits, sadly, being at the bottom of the heap, end up in the awful, I'll use the horrible word, shit jobs in India. Because that is who they are. That is what they're destined to do from birth, sadly. 97% of what are called manual scavenging jobs are held by Dalits. These are the jobs, unfortunately, sadly, somebody has to do it, but they have to manually clean, carry or dispose of human excrement in awful latrines and open drain sewers or septic tanks. I watched videos of these men, these Dalits, who were sent down literally into the most godforsaken holes in the ground that are just full of human excrement to clean them out. I mean, I don't even want to dwell on it. It's horrifying. And then, of course, you look at poor Dalit women. I talked about how many women a day are raped, Dalit women. The Dalit women suffer almost a double discrimination. Firstly, because they're Dalits, they are lowest caste, and secondly, because they are females. And James and I often talk about how women are treated in India, this dreadful endemic problem that Indian society has, where it treats its women not as equals, but as second-class citizens. The sexual assaults and physical assaults against women are so prevalent, they are a national endemic, and they're a national shame. And of course, if you're a Dalit woman, you're doubly hit by this. And the RSS, as a result, it really comes back down to the Brahmins and their tool, the RSS. They spread this hatred against all the Dalits, against the lower class, particularly against the minorities like the Muslims, the Christians, the Sikhs, essentially to consolidate the Hindu vote. And this is what they did last year, particularly in that last election. And of course, the political wing of the RSS, the Brahmanical RSS, is the BJP. And since the BJP took power in 2014, here's some facts and figures. Attacks on Dalits increased by over 27%. On tribals, by over 20%. That was in a few years ago, in 2018, after Modi came to power. It's even worse now. 91% of hate crimes between 2009 and 2019, and 97% of violent incidents between 2010 and 2017, in the name of cow vigilance, of course, pro-Hindi, took place after Modi came to power. And I do know, and I haven't got the facts in front of me, unfortunately, but we know that trend has continued, that hate crimes against the lower caste, hate crimes against the minorities have increased massively in recent years. So these are just the facts and figures up to about 5 years ago. We know, and even in the last 5 years, they've got even worse. And finally, as another random statistic that just actually proves this whole situation, the caste system isn't just existing, it is alive and well. Only 6 to 10% of Indians had inter-caste marriages. In other words, less than 10% of Indians married outside their caste. In other words, that caste system is so deeply embedded, as of course it has been for 3,000 years in India. It's so deeply embedded in Indian society that less than 10%, less than 1 in 10 Indians marry outside their caste. I think that, James, speaks volumes.
Absolutely it does, Angus. And let's not forget that the caste system, or the Brahmins, those with the money have the power. And that is no different on who's controlling policy, whether that is law enforcement and criminal justice, or whether or not it is trade and economic stability. So that just in itself, we can see that. But if you have questions still about it, just go to the different sites such as Human Rights Watch, even the UN, where they received official complaints and proceeded with official investigations, are getting stonewalled by the India government when it comes to them protecting the Brahmins and these people who are still practicing these archaic, caste system hierarchy. So again, if you don't believe us, believe me, there's a lot more evidence and proof out there that we can bring in.
Indeed, and as I often have to repeat and repeat again, is that we are not anti-India. We are anti-Brahmins. We're anti-caste system. Like the Sikh community are not anti-Indian, they're anti-Brahmin, anti these extremists who sit at the top of that pyramid. They are the people who are keeping ordinary Indians effectively enslaved in this system. And you in India, for those of you watching India, for heaven's sake, wake up. Tell more and more people that you have to shake off this caste system. You will never be a modern democratic society of equality that Khalistan will be. You will never achieve those basic human rights until you shake off this system where only this tiny minority, this 3.5% of India, actually benefit. There's only 3.5% of Indian population benefit from the system. In other words, 96.5% of you are not benefiting. You are losing in the system. Until you shake it off, things ain't going to change. So anyway, James, we must move on as the clock counts down, as it always does. Okay, our comment section. Thank you to all our wonderful audience for so many comments that have poured in recent days. Let's start with Let Me Check. Punjab is dead, bro. What you guys are talking about is a pipe dream, but reality is Pakistan and India are on the same page. They won't ever give space to a third party like Khalistan. Well, okay, this is an interesting perspective. Punjab is dead. Now, actually, I don't necessarily disagree with you. Punjab is dying. But within the Punjab beats the heart of a lion, because the Sikh people never lie down and let it happen. What do you think the Khalistan movement is all about? Punjab is only dying because Delhi is doing its level best to drive that dagger into the heart of the Punjab. But believe me, as I said, that heart is beating powerfully. It is not dying. That heart is building up the Khalistan movement. Now, you might say it's a pipe dream. It's more than a pipe dream. It's actually happening. Pakistan and India, yeah, of course, they're not voluntarily going to give up space. They're not going to give up land for Khalistan. But this is the point. This is how democracy works. The Soviet Union was never voluntarily going to break apart and allow all these countries to spring up as sovereign nations. It had no choice because, firstly, democracy won in the end, the people won in the end. And secondly, international will was there. And this is what's happening with Khalistan. The international will is moving into alignment. The United Nations and all the Western nations are now starting to understand the benefit that Khalistan will bring to the world. And unfortunately, Pakistan and India might not end up having a choice in this matter. It is going to be basically imposed upon them. If they call themselves democracy, they will have no choice, James.
Absolutely, and let's not forget that it's not even a third party, it's a first party because they are members of the India community, they are citizens, and Punjab is still a part of India, so that makes them the first party group. Secondly, they would then become a second party only because when you are looking from the context of being in India, looking out, they're a second party, but again, when they form Khalistan, they'll be the first party. It'll be first party again because they will be leading their own destiny.
Exactly, that's a very good point. They're not a third party. They're, of course, your own people, and they have that democratic right to self-determination. It's a simple fact under international law. So, Bobby Singh, this is a good point, and we make this point quite regularly, is that, look, Sikhs should actually talk to other communities, the Christians, Muslims, the Jains, or even Hindus, and say, look, actually, you're all better off, and this comes back to the caste system as well, you're so much better off in Khalistan than Hindustan. Khalistan, as we always say, will be open to all. It will not be some sort of Sikh theocracy. It will be a nation run under Sikh principles, which are, frankly, I would say, the highest principles of morality and political expediency and democracy, etc. But the country will be open to all, and everybody, no matter the background, religion, will be treated as equals, James.
Absolutely. And again, it's all about that equality. And as I said, I believe it was last night, Angus, when I referred back to the Sikh dynasty and the Sikh empire, where there was that equal representation and everybody had a voice.
Exactly, indeed. So TC also follows up with the truck driving story. Yes, we did actually cover this in the end. Thanks, TC. My main concern about this was your first message seems to have disappeared, as many messages do, TC, unfortunately, as we well know. We are up against all sorts of agents acting on behalf of India, whether it's in YouTube or wherever, we don't know. But ultimately, back in Google, we are up against it, which is why we need your support in the audience. Firstly, keep messaging, keep trying, but keep spreading the word. That is, we're still here, we're still fighting hard, but we are up against this enormous resource of India to get the message out there. So thanks for your contributions, but do keep your efforts going, keep the activism going. It's all appreciated. Free Spirit, this is an interesting one. This talks about what you say is a little twist in the story. Hindu temples have surveillance cameras. So when they are graffitied and vandalism takes place, yeah, absolutely. They should be blamed on the perpetrators, and they claim it was these wretched Khalistanis who are damaging our Hindu temples. Now, you refer to a story I actually did cover at the time. In Australia, was it last year, about 18 months ago, there was an act of vandalism against a mandir, a Hindu mandir in Australia. And of course, they went to the police and there's a big fury. It was these wretched Khalistanis because the graffiti was anti-Modi, pro-Khalistan. So, of course, they blamed the local Khalistani community. Well, the police investigated it, and what did it turn out? It was actually perpetrated, most likely, by Hindu extremists, Hindutva extremists who were operating locally. Funnily enough, the CCTV at the time around that Hindu temple was not working. It just happened to be switched off for some bizarre reason when the vandalism occurred. Funny that, wasn't it? And of course the police did their investigations, and the official police report, which I did show in the story at the time when I covered this, it showed This was most likely perpetrated by Hindutva activists who we are aware of in the area at the time. So as you absolutely say, Free Spirit, it's what's called a false flag. This is what Hindutva do. This is why we're not conspiracy theorists. We don't make these things up. This was one example of many where these Hindutva activists will stoop to any possible dirty trick to try and smear the Sikh community, to damage and undermine the Sikh community. That's what we're up against, James.
Absolutely. And, I really don't have anything to add to that because I think that summed it up nicely. And it is something that we covered, I believe it was actually last summer, but around the Calgary referendum time, I believe.
Indeed, yeah. So in other words, the message here from Free Spirit, thank you Free Spirit for your contribution on this, is don't believe everything you read, particularly when it smears the Sikh community. Usually there's a backstory. And, a lot about the floods. We don't have time to go through in great detail on this, but basically these three comments here from Gurjeet Full, Preeting Dylan, Charming Hope, important points. Basically, all these 3 points, the flooding that's occurring, which happens every blasted year after the monsoon, it's down to bad governance. As Gurjeet said, the Bakra Dam releases loads of water, which then floods downstream, unsurprisingly. Preeting Dylan says it's downstream down in Rajasthan, Haryana borders. It's because of dams that they keep closed downstream, which means the water then backs up. And Charming Hope says, in a plea for just common sense, there's no policy, no accountability, no morality. To wrap these 3 comments up, and thank you to the three of you for your comments, basically it's down to mismanagement. Now, the question is that mismanagement incompetence or is it deliberate, James?
All I can say, Angus, is that it's a damn shame.
Oh, great pun. And on that punishing pun, let's move on to our final set of comments. Gaz, I can only assume Gaz in Australia. G'day, Mark and Angus. Well, Mark, how do you feel about that?
Hey, I've been called worse.
Haven't we all? Thank you, Gaz, for your continued loyalty. Much appreciated. Free Spirit comes back in again. Now, James, one of your fan club again. Free Spirit felt in the last comment about your appearance about how young you were looking, but Free Spirit decided to bite his tongue, afraid I might unwittingly offend him. You are looking good, bud.
Well, thank you very much. Elvis has left the building.
Honestly, we're going to have a separate page for James Cousineau's fan club. Narinder Singh Saini says, many thanks. This is Dr. N.S. Saini. Thank you, yes. Thanks us for the show, full of information, unbiased, useful analysis, etc., etc. I love this comment because it just shows the quality of people who watches. We have Dr. Saini. Thank you, Dr. Saini, for your support. Very much appreciated. At last, that's a terrible thing to say, but we do know that in our audience we have a huge cross-section from children all the way up to more mature people from all sorts of academia, but now we have Dr. Saini join us, and just shows the quality of people who watch us, James. I feel really warm inside that we have somebody academically high achieving and clearly intelligent who watches and appreciates us. We don't just spout clowning nonsense, clearly.
Obviously, we're a class act here, Angus, but again, don't let that deter, some of the others that like to add to our hate pages. We invite you to still watch as well.
Indeed we do. So Dr. Saini, thank you for your appreciation. We genuinely appreciate your comment. Thank you for that. Satbachan Singh, you guys make my day more brighter with a little more truth. That's what we're here for. Well, we're actually here to spread the message, but if we make your day more brighter, that is a much better reason for our existence, James.
Exactly. I can't sum it up any better. And of course, our audience, by these comments, brighten our day every day. So it's beautiful.
Certainly do. So do keep the comments coming. They really do brighten our days. And the final word of the day goes to Jagtar City. We had a comment yesterday that says, Sikhs remember. Well, absolutely, Sikhs do remember. And they never, of course, forget June and November 1984, Operation Blue Star, the dreadful genocide that happened in November 1984. We will never forget that. We will make sure that people never forget it. And our audience, of course, will never forget it. But we will do our level best to ensure that a wider world is fully aware of what happened in that dreadful year. But of course, not just in 1984, but what happened since then across the 80s and 90s, the indiscriminate genocide, effectively, of a whole generation of young Sikhs that was perpetrated by Well, let's go back to the Brahmins again, essentially the ruling elite of India. We must never let them forget, and that is what drives Khalistan Zindabad, James.
Absolutely. And for those of our audience that may not be of Sikh heritage or culture, just use the hashtag never forget 1984. So hashtag never forget 1984, and you'll find a lot of resources and other information outside of what we present, so you can get a well-balanced idea of what we're talking about here if you're new to the show, and or as I said, just from another culture that maybe you're learning along with us.
Indeed. Khalistan Zindabad, absolutely, all the way. But on that note, we will end the show for another day. Thanks so much for watching. We are several minutes over time as usual. Don't forget to keep those comments coming in. We do really appreciate all the comments. There have been some fabulous comments, so always appreciated, even those who just dip in with a simple one-word hi or whatever. Of course, we appreciate it. Many of you have been messaging directly at message@satlogetv.com about things you'd like us to talk about. Much appreciated for those. We do appreciate. Of course, we do read every email message that comes in. But that is it for another day. We must bring Perspectives for a close. It is a goodbye from me. It is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.